In a real sense, I think people use that phrase, the lesser of two evils, in two ways. Most people use it as hyperbole, right? It's an exaggeration, right? They don't mean that the persons are actually evil or the positions are actually evil incarnate. It's just an exaggerated way of talking about something being bad in their view, right? And so in that case, I would encourage people to stop using the term, right? Um, but the other way to sort of use that phrase is to actually mean what you say, right? That you're sort of facing two options that are in some general sense, evil, wrong, sinful, and you're sort of facing making a choice. Now, when you think about it in terms of voting, I think on some absolute level, we're always choosing between two imperfect situations or two imperfect candidates or two persons who some degree are warped by sin, right, or evil in that sense. And so that's not really a situation you can escape. And it doesn't matter whether you're saying this candidate is less evil, so I'm going to vote for them, or you're saying both of the candidates are evil and I'm not going to vote. That actually is a lesser of two evils position. You just can't escape that. That's the nature of the thing. And so in this current election, I don't think that's a useful way to frame it, either as motivation for voting, and certainly it's not a useful way to frame it in terms of discouraging people from voting for either candidate, because we just want to always be in that situation. And for my own part, I actually think we are looking at two positions that are morally reprehensible, two, in that sense, actual evils, right, in terms of those positions. And so then the question is more challenging. What's the Christian's responsibility? And for my part, I don't think you can abstain from that. I think you have to find a way within the bounds of reality to actually do something constructive to at least limit the progress of evil, even if you can't overcome all the options. Best case scenario, you're able to overcome all the options. You're not able to do that, then you at least sort of are falling back on the strategy of trying to limit the progress of evil. And again, classic examples of this, you can think of a Dietrich Bonhoeffer in Nazi Germany. Bonhoeffer, thinking through the rise of Hitler, thinking through the persecution of Jews, politically could have opted to say, okay, this is all evil, I'm out. He could have remained in Harlem and worshiping at Abyssinian Baptist Church and had a good time discovering jazz and blues. But Bonhoeffer said, listen, if I skip the troubles in Germany now, I'll have no right to participate in the rebuilding of Germany later. He saw this as a clear and present evil that he actually had to actively oppose. And so he did what he could to get Jews out of Nazi Germany. He did what he could to end Hitler's reign. And we can evaluate, how far he should have gone or not. But there was a man taking seriously the evil that was before him. And I think we're in this election in a Bonhoeffer light kind of moment where we have to make some choices to slow the progress. Well, I think one thing that we want to do is avoid the temptation to say there's one biblical or Christian position. That's a mistake I see a lot of pastors making, and again, I think it's manipulative at its core. It may be well intended, but what those pastors are doing is just trying to close the range of options on their people, and to bind their people and to bind the conscience of their people in a way that the Bible doesn't. And so the first thing is just sort of say, hey, listen, okay, I'm in a complex world dealing with a complex set of issues, some of which I see very clearly, some of which are a little murky, some of which are just, not even known to me at this point. And so accept the complexity. The second thing to do, I think, is to get your Bible out, right? And to really be immersing yourself in the Bible so that you're thinking God's thoughts after him. And you're seeking his way and his will. And you're there too. In the Bible, you're admitting the complexity of the Bible. So, for example, you take something like capital punishment. Yes, Romans 13 says with the exercise, the state has the right to exercise the sword, right? And they do so as ministers of God, especially against the evildoer and the unrighteous. But then you've got to sort of put that against the times where Daniel and others, for example, engage in a kind of civil disobedience against the state. And the state makes laws that are contrary to God's commands on his people. And so they don't eat, and they suffer the ovens. Well, okay, so Romans 13 then isn't this flat statement. You start to breathe the rest of the Bible into it, and you get a rounded 4D picture, right, of complexity and the analysis that requires. So get your Bible open, read your Bible widely, think through those questions that are important to you politically with your Bible open. And then, I think there's some place where you've got to sort of take the issues and begin to order them in some sense of importance or prioritization. And here too is a place where I think the evangelical church has been de-skilled in this area, because much of the evangelical church has been taught for a good 40 years now that the only thing that matters is abortion. Well, it's not the only thing that matters. And then people will say, well, yes, we know it's not the only thing that matters, but it matters most, and matters so much so that functionally it's the only thing that matters. Well, it's not even functionally the only thing that matters. But you gotta sort of take the sets of issues that the Lord is pressing upon you, and you gotta put them in some order. You gotta be able to relate them to each other. And then you gotta ask yourself some questions that sort of are aimed at your blind spots. You gotta ask yourself, why are there some issues that don't seem important to me, and should they be? And who's talking about those issues, and let me learn about them. And maybe that begins to change the ordering and the prioritization. And so if mass incarceration isn't on your radar, you've heard somebody mention it, and maybe some of those somebodies are persons you respect, but you don't know anything about the issue, you probably want to go do a little homework on the issue, or immigration policy, or whatever it is. And then do the reordering with your Bible open and your nose in the Bible.